Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room. Today I'm here with Misty Winkler, and we have never met in real life. We literally did a quick email exchange. So I'm actually going to introduce myself so that you can have some background, and then I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. But hello, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So I'm Roseanne Uwagwe. Feel free to call me Ro. And I am a wife. I've been married for 11 years, and we have three boys. Our boys are 10. He's going to be 10 this Saturday. 7, and I have a 1 year old. He's a year, 5 months. And I would say probably like the year before the pandemic, my husband said, "Bro, let's do home-centered education. Let's homeschool the boys." And I'm like, okay. And the reason I was like so okay with it is because he presented it as home-centered education, meaning the kids learn in the house, someone else comes in the house and teaches them, and we continue to work. And I'm like, sure, why not? Fast forward to the pandemic, we kind of saw what it looked like and got a taste of it. And then I quit my job in 2021 to build my coaching business, only to get this prompt that I could not ignore from God that I needed to do it. And I'm like, when I'm building my business, God, did you not get the memo? Right. So that's how I started. And we've been doing that since 2022. Well, the end of 2021, and it's going fine. So, Misty, tell us all about you. Tell me about you as the woman. Tell me about you as the mom, the homeschool mom, and like all the things, all the roles, all the titles. And don't feel shy to just let us know how amazing you are.
Well, my husband and I are both second generation homeschoolers. So, like my introduction to homeschooling happened when I was 6 years old in the 80s. So it's kind of a longish story. So my parents started homeschooling in the 80s when it was barely legal. And I couldn't ride my bike during the day because actually one time I did, and a cop did pull me over and asked, like, why aren't you in school? So homeschooling now is completely different. There are so many resources now, and that there weren't at all. No one was really talking about it when I was younger. So the resources like that my mom had were so slim. And so I've kind of seen over my lifetime just the explosion of homeschooling, which is amazing. And it's overwhelming because there are so many options, but at the same time, that makes it available and a doable option for a lot of different families and a lot of different situations. So, um, my husband and I have been married for 23 years. We got married at 19 and had our first at 21. At first, I was pregnant with our oldest, and there was a group of people that were getting together to start a private classical school. And we thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea. We would like options. We were both critical oldest children. And we thought, well, probably a school could do it better than homeschooling. And that school effort actually didn't take off at that time. So we said, well, that's fine. Homeschooling is plan B, and that's God's will for us. So that's what we'll do. And so I read every book that I could because there were so many more since my mom had been homeschooling, and just tried to wrap my head around doing a good job with it. And um, we've homeschooled all of our kids all the way through. Well, they're not all the way through. So our oldest is 21 and he's married and just had our first grandbaby. And then our second son is in college and he's moved out. And then I still have three that were homeschooling. So a senior in high school, 16-year-old, a sophomore in high school who's almost 15, and an 11-year-old. So my homeschool days now are looking numbered. Now I've homeschooled more years than I will continue to homeschool. I'm more than halfway through. And the growth and the opportunities and just the family culture that we're able to have because we did choose home education. I'm just so, so grateful that that school didn't start up because we've just loved homeschooling.
That is such a great story. And you have such amazing perspective because you've done it and you're doing it, right? Like, so you
Yeah.
understand we're in the trenches and what it was in day one, and you understand like what it is now. And I'm sure you have so much experience because there are personality differences, which means that you have to educate differently. But at the same token, you have so much experience in terms of, well, I did this with this one, and maybe that wasn't the best thing. Sorry, kid, but let's move on. And this is the reason I don't like scripting these kind of interviews because you shared so much that I would go off on a tangent anyways. Because like one of the things you talked about was how back then there weren't a lot of resources, and now that should be a blessing, but there's so much weight in that blessing because it, like you said, it becomes overwhelming. And I'm totally the person who has like shiny object syndrome, like, ooh, I didn't hear about that curriculum. Let me check this. And then I thought I was eclectic, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to do everything. Like that's not eclectic. I'm not just
Yeah.
picking and choosing what I want. I'm doing every single history curriculum. That's a different story.
Because there are so many good ones.
I know. I know. Because you went from like, do I need to piece this together myself? Or, oh, this one is out of the box. So, oh, but I like this one. Let's put it with the box. And it's just like, calm down, girl. I don't know how you've been married for 23 because you look like you're 23. So I guess
Well,
homeschool is not driving you crazy.
I like the Zoom settings where like
I will say Zoom is very forgiving because I've had some meetings on Teams and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not what the mirror was showing. I thought I was looking okay today. Yeah. So there was an email. Honestly, Misty, I don't know how I found out about you. It's probably those 2 o'clock in the morning. Let me check on this. And somehow I ended up on your newsletter, and there was a newsletter that you shared, and I just looked it up really quickly. And there were just some things like, how you get an email, and you're like, oh, that sounds great. And then you get another email, and you're like, she gets me. She understands me. She's reading my whole life story. There was something that you were talking about in terms of organization and how I'm going to read it. One of the things you said is most people think or even teach that being organized is an achievement you can unlock, a switch you can flip, a button you can push. And then what I really loved is that you redefine organization, right? So you didn't say, here's what organization looks like. If you're not doing it this way, you're not organized. You're like, what is organization to you? How does that work for your family? And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
yeah. So being homeschooled and the oldest of 7 kids, so I helped my mom with meals and chores and changing diapers and all that. And I always wanted to be a wife and mom.
Mm.
And so then when I got married young, I just assumed I already knew all that I needed to know. And so I could just like start in and level up and just pretty much rock the whole situation and be awesome from the get-go. And it was going to be no problem at all.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it happened.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, it turns out it was difficult
Mhm.
and so many ups and downs. And I what I ended up figuring out after years of what I call the boom and bust cycle, where I'd like, clean, organize everything, although everything got smaller and smaller. Um, and then it would all fall apart and I'd have to do it all over again.
Yeah.
And so I realized that what I was trying to achieve was some kind of finish line or mountaintop where it's like, okay, I'm going to get this over with. So
Mm.
I wanted to figure it out and move on and never have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tried that with menu planning and cleaning and laundry and all the things I wanted to like, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then after I figure it out, it's like it's going to be off my plate. And then I can go on to bigger and better things. And I never got to the point where I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like laundry
Oh my gosh, yes.
where the laundry is never done. And you can have all different systems. You can have a big old laundry day and do it all in a day. or you can do a load a day. Like there are all kinds of configurations, but it's actually all just configuring actually doing it.
Right.
And, we joke about the problem with laundry is that like we're all wearing tomorrow's laundry. It's never
Right.
done.
Right.
Laundry is never done. And I went through a period as I realized that my dream of not finishing and moving on from
Mm.
the housework, from getting my house set up just right, it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
And I kind of went through then a slump, or if it was, so why bother? If this isn't something that I can just totally figure out
Mhm.
and move past, I'm just going to do it as little as possible. And then that didn't work out very well either.
Oh.
And God really convicted me there. Um, and I realized that if there were no if I did finish laundry, so there was none left to ever do again, what that would mean is that no life was in my home.
Hmm.
Life produces laundry, life produces dishes and used up food. And so needing to go, all of these things are the effects of life being lived. And
Mm.
so when I was wanting it to all be done, I was actually wishing for less life to be in my home, and
Mm.
maybe even to the point of no life.
Yeah.
Because if the house was going to stay clean, that would mean no people. And is that really what I wanted?
Right.
And so that change of attitude and orientation was huge. And I realized even organization is like laundry. It's because everything is always tending towards disorder, right? That's entropy. It's built into the world. Things are going to just gradually fall to
Out
pieces.
of
The
place.
world needs tending. And that's actually our
Mm.
job as people, is to be caretakers and tend whatever we're given. And then you add on top of that growing people and educating them and nurturing them and bringing them up, that makes messes.
Mm.
And they use things and then don't put them in the right place. And, if your homeschooling books are out everywhere all the time,
Yeah.
and all of that is just a part of life. And when we see that it's evidence of life and a part of bringing up people, then we're able to rejoice in it
Mm.
rather than be frustrated in it, because we think our goal is to like make it magazine
Yeah.
photo op, which is a static, here's something that's been achieved and it stays the way you put
Yeah.
it. When that's the ideal, you're going to try to get rid of life being lived.
Mm.
Life being lived is a problem.
Mm.
And when we rejoice in life being lived, we can actually rejoice in the tending, caretaking work that it involves, even if it's ongoing and repetitive. It's the repetitiveness isn't actually a problem.
Mm.
Attitude about it, that's the problem. Like our expectation and our desires for what we think it's supposed to be like. So we
Yeah.
need to change what we think it's supposed to be like.
See, you already shifted my mindset just in that email, but like everything you shared has been like so convicting because you're right. It's not that you have to do it again. It's the attitude about the fact that you have to do it. And if I'm being honest, I'm being a little hypocritical because I remember telling my son this morning that, as you advance, some things are going to be more challenging. And it's not the math question that's a problem, it's your attitude behind it. And here I am, like bickering, like, why is the living room messy again? And at one point I said, you know what? I'm just gonna be a minimalist. I'm gonna throw away everything.
Yes.
I'm gonna have five things and that's it. And I'm like, that's not me. I don't even keep my hair the same way for a week. Like that's not my personality. And then I said, okay, bro, look forward 5 years. Are you going to regret bickering with the kids over the silly toys that they had on the floor? Or are you going to be like, why couldn't I just ignore the toys and love my kids? I'm like, no, I'm not going to regret it. I want the place clean. And that's like literally the conversation I had in my head. Like, no, I want the place clean. So then I said, okay, that didn't work. Bro, clutter affects you. How about the goal is to get above its ability to affect you? So I'm like trying to do all
Mm,
these, I'm
that's
sitting
good.
drinking my tea and like this is the conversation I'm having for 5 minutes in my head. I'm like, it shouldn't affect the relationship, but how can I grow above its ability to affect me? And I'm like, don't have an answer for that. It affects me. I need it clean, right? I know neurologically and psychologically, clutter does affect your productivity. I know that. But my goal is to get above its ability to affect me. And I don't have the solution for that yet. So if you have some thoughts, I'm happy to hear.
That's so good. And I love that picture of it because I think it is possible. But another problem that I found in myself was like I wanted the answer right away. I wanted some kind of switch to flip. Like, yeah, you're so right. Like we have to get above it. But then again, thinking, so there's going to be some chore chart
Mhm.
or some mindset shift that can just
Yeah.
happen that's going to make that happen. And the answer again is tending and repeating and practicing even in ourselves. And
Mhm.
so, um, like with the daily clutter, because homeschooling is does mean your house is going to be more cluttered
Oh, yeah.
than someone whose house is less lived in. Like
Yes.
it's just a fact. If people
Yes.
are not in the house as much of the day, doing less in the house, then their house is not going to be as messy, because less is happening.
Right. Right.
So it's just a fact.
And
More
less
life is
life,
being
as you
lived.
said. Yes.
Yes, more life is being lived in a homeschooling family's house. And so one of the practices that has helped me is um, having a set time of day that we all tidy up together. And then it does get tight, mostly tidy at some point in the day. And when it's not that time of day, I have to let it go. But I
Right.
can let it go because I know it's going to be dealt with.
Right.
So, because sometimes it's just that tension of when am I going to deal with it? It's just going to get worse. And we start that kind of negative spiral.
Mhm.
But saying, nope, there's a time for doing that. And now is not that time. We're going to go do something else. And and again, looking at it as there are books all over my house. And that means that my kids are into books.
That's right.
So take a deep breath. This is what I wanted all along.
Right.
This is what
Right.
I asked for.
Right. Oh my God. As you're talking, it made me think about like when you said let it go, I'm like, this is also a patience thing, right? And
Yeah.
like I know my dominant, like I have two dominant flaws. One is patience and one is inconsistency. And I realize how every single thing ties back. Because I told you earlier that I'm the person who wants every single curriculum, but I'm also the person who forgot that I was using that curriculum. I'm like, oh, where's that worksheet? Were we doing that? Right. So the consistency there, but like what you're saying is the patience piece of I want it now. I want it clean now.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's going to be clean by the end of the day. It's going to be clean at 3 o'clock or whenever we decide. So let it
Hmm.
go. That's really, really good. I'm going to find something else that I highlighted. We keep waiting to arrive at that magical state of being organized. That was such a mindset shift for me because, like you said earlier, like I wanted to do it and for it to be done. I remember creating a Google Doc on how I'm going to organize my house, and it was called something like Operation Cleanup because in my head, it's something that, you know what? I called it Operation whatever it was, not realizing it was an operation. I wanted a
Oh,
project. I wanted to do the project and be
yes.
done, not
Yes.
realizing I thought operation was just cute, but operation is something, it's a process. You're doing it over and over. So like my Google Doc knew that it wasn't a one and done, but in my head, it was a project that I wanted to do. And I
And
remember
check
saying
off.
to the boys, because even though clutter affects me, I'm logical. And I remember
Hmm.
saying to the kids, we don't have a system, and that's why we spend so much time cleaning. I'm gonna buy a 16 tote cube organizer and we're gonna organize by whatever we want. Either we have like one box that are your favorite stuff or your morning basket or whatever it is, or we're gonna have one box by strand, subjects or whatever. And I said, until we set that up, leave the books. You're not responsible for that. And literally we had that set up, I think on Friday or something. And every day I go like, because we do take things out, but now they know exactly where to put it back. Whereas before, you'd have to put it back neatly on the bookshelf, but there was no real order or real system, right? So I said, I'm going to take accountability for my piece. We don't have a system, we don't have a process. You are off the hook. Leave, whenever I say clean up, don't focus on that. But once the system is in place, now I'm holding you accountable, right? But the piece that really, really resonates with me is a life being lived. Because I've heard people share reflections where they're like, you can have a clean house, but that just means that nobody's visiting you because you're so miserable. Or you can have a tidy kitchen, but that means that you're eating alone, right? So like I've heard things like that, but I never thought of it from this perspective. So thank you for sharing not only the backstory or the story behind the story, but shifted my mindset. And that's why I wanted to have you on because that one little email helped me so much and resonated so deeply. I'm like, you're such a blessing. I just wanted to bring you on to share more. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rose.
So one of the things you talked about was like rejoicing rather than being frustrated. How did you get to that aha moment?
By being frustrated a lot. Um, yeah. I mean, I always wanted to be the cheerful mom for
Mm,
my kids, and it just didn't seem to happen magically.
yeah.
And it was one of those things that I kept putting off as well. I thought that my mood or my cheerfulness was dependent on uh, me having things figured
The
out,
situation or the circumstance,
the
right?
situation. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Whether that was the kids doing what I asked them to do, I'll be cheerful if
Right.
you do what I tell you. I'll be
Conditional.
cheerful if I've done what I've told me to do.
Yeah.
I'll be cheerful after I get my organization system in place, after I meal plan and it actually works. And and so it was contingent
Mhm.
on all these other things for people. And I was just convicted. I mean, through reading scripture, basically, because like it's a command, rejoice always. And so that means, and the fruit of the spirit is a joy. That means it's coming from the spirit in me, not as an after effect of anything else in my circumstances. So um, I can't blame shift. No
Mhm.
one else is responsible or accountable for my mood or my attitude. I'm responsible directly before God, no matter what circumstances are. And once I started seeing that, um, it's like in almost every book, in almost every epistle in the New Testament is some kind of something just to poke your attitude and
Yeah.
convince you of like, you're actually supposed to be rejoicing, be grateful,
Mhm.
and be faithful to God, which is different than having the outcomes that you wanted happen.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons I was so frustrated so much is because I wanted things to go my way.
Yeah.
I was a stubborn oldest child, and I said, listen, I have a great idea. This is the way things should go. And whether because it's other people or just the situation and God's providence, my way didn't work out a lot. And that needed to be me humbling myself before God, not holding tighter and tighter to my own plan.
Wow.
I was supposed to be doing what God wanted me to do, not get the outcome I wanted to get. Basically, I was trying to play God in my own life.
Oh my God.
And even though I thought, well, it's a good idea,
Right.
I'm full of great ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, but are you loving your children? Are you? And it was like all of just basic things. I was like, basic obedience first,
Yeah.
then let's talk.
Oh my gosh. This feels like a setup. I thought you were gonna say, Ro, here are 3 tips to get organized by noon. And I'm being like convicted and like,
That's what we all want.
right, of course. And
Yes.
everything you're saying goes back to attitude, right? So like
Yeah.
Organization, it's your attitude about it. Like faithful, everything's just literally like you said, the fruits of the spirit and like doing the commands that God says. If it was easy, he probably wouldn't have to command us because you just get to rejoice every day, right? But he's like, no, I am commanding you to rejoice every day. I'm commanding you to love. I'm commanding you to have faith.
Yeah.
All right. Can you tell us like, so what exactly is your business? Like I get the emails and I know that you share about organization mindset and you have like fabulous videos sharing more about that. Like, what are your products? What are your services? And don't tell
I
me it's
have
about attitude. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I have a couple of books.
Okay.
Um, the Convivial Homeschool, Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know the subtitles. It took me a while to memorize. But that is, it's almost like a devotional. They're really super short chapters, and it's all about um seeing the good that God is working in your life as a homeschool mom while homeschooling your kids. Because sometimes it's again the outcome thing. We're
Mhm.
thinking about what we want for our kids, which is good, and that's a part of our job. But then when we don't see the outcome right away, we can get discouraged and frustrated. And so, as a homeschool kid myself, and then having homeschooled as well, I have stories and encouragement there to see that God's at work for our good and our kids' good, even on the hard days, and
Mm,
to be able to shift our perspective to see that. And then simplified organization, learn to love what must be done, has six homemaking steps
okay.
to take to kind of reclaim home management as our domain that we embrace and enjoy, but it boils down to our attitude about it, uh, more than like set up this system. So it's steps for really personal change when it
Right.
comes to our home, although there are, that comes out of what we do then.
I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing so transparently. What year did you start your business?
Well, I actually just started blogging as a like basic mom blog when blogs were brand new
Mhm.
in the early 2000s. And then I had an ebook at one point because I had put together a menu planning system that was working pretty well. And so I put that together then as an ebook and started selling that. And then after about two bouts of baby blues and trying to get up out of survival mode after baby number three and then four, um, I put together a course that was kind of the steps to get back in the saddle.
Mm,
And then that just kind of developed. I iterated and changed and developed it. A lot of it went into then the book that is a new release. But eventually I had several courses, and then now all the courses are in a membership with a community and accountability, called Convivial Circle.
I see. The
So it's
reason
very gradual process
I
that kind
see.
of, it feels almost like it happened organically. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna have an online
Right.
business. It like happened.
And that's why I asked because I was trying to figure out if because you have such a great ideas, you're like, you know what, I'm going to teach moms how to be organized, or you're like, I am failing at this. I'm going to teach them what not to do, right? Like I'm trying to figure out like how it all kind of morphed because even with homeschooling, I thought I was going to teach my kids, and I'm like, oh, so I'm learning too. And I'm not
Uh-huh.
talking education. I'm talking the character, the attitude, all the adjustments. I'm like, I got tricked again. Okay.
Yeah, it really all grew out of um, the blog, just sharing what I was learning. And as I put it together in more and more formalized ways, it um, has made the material more applicable, and but it's all been just a growth out of my own personal growth and lessons. And it's been wonderful because um, writing the emails all the time and posting stuff in my community and putting together a new course is just a way to review it all myself because
Mhm.
it isn't a status that you unlock. This is all stuff I am still applying in new ways because life keeps changing.
Yeah. Oh,
Right
yeah.
now, I'm graduating kids and they're leaving the house, and life changes, and the same principles apply, but it looks totally different. And so
Mhm.
it's never the fact that you figure it all out and then you're good to go. Like you keep applying the same principles, applying, growing in the fruits of the spirit in whole new ways.
Right. Right. It's so funny that you said that because I was thinking the other day, all right, 2021, we bought a house, quit my job. 2022, we started home center education. 2023, we had our third baby. 2024, what do you have in store? Like it's almost like I'm bracing myself, like, is this the quiet year? Like, should I expect something in 2025? Or is it like it's not over yet? September through December might have like a major life change. But I do want to say thank you so much for allowing your test to be shared into a testimony and like to share that. So, like I said earlier, transparently with the community, like you're a real blessing. Like I said, the emails just resonate so deeply, and I can tell that it's not, oh, let me just throw some things on a paper and see if I can get someone to do something. It's literally, here's what I experienced. You can learn from me, or you can do it yourself. You choose. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Do you have anything you want to share?
Well, I think it does all come down to what I've made as my tagline, which is repent, rejoice, repeat. So when we recognize that we're doing something wrong, that we are failing, we're not stuck in that.
Mm,
We can turn to God and repent and get his forgiveness, which is a cleansing from it. And we're covered in Christ's righteousness. And that allows us to rejoice, which means that we then obey and we work out what God has given us in gratitude. So we're working in joy and gratitude. And then we just keep that cycle up on repeat. So it isn't finishing something and achieving a certain level. God's always taking us through that cycle for our good. And
mm.
so we always do come back to that rejoice position in the center there.
I love it. You are such a joy, and I'm so grateful that I found you. However, you ended up in my inbox, I'm grateful that our paths crossed. Thank you so, so much for your time today.
Thank you, Ro.